It is my pleasure to introduce, maybe I can get my computer to work, Stephen Gompertz. Stephen is a leader in quality systems management with over 30 years of experience in the medical technology industry. His career includes roles in quality systems development and implementation, project management, engineering automation, configuration management, audit and software development for companies, including Pelican Biothermal, St. Jude Medical, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, Vital Images, and Control Data. He is now a consultant to the industry, providing guidance on quality systems and regulatory compliance. Instead of reading the rest of that to you guys, I will move on with Stephen's presentation. And at this point, Stephen, I hand the floor over to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna switch over to sharing my screen.
Absolutely.
Make sure I pick the right one here. It's gonna be that one. Should be good now. All right. Okay. Well, hey everybody, thanks for inviting me to do this presentation tonight. I'm happy to really happy to see the turnout. It's always nice to see people get interested, especially when it's not your typical quality topic. As I was telling people in the breakout room, it's not like we're going to talk about CPKs and process validation and the kind of the hard technical stuff. We're going to be talking about some soft skills tonight. But I do think that's really important to being effective as a quality leader. So Hillary already kind of gave my background. I made a lot of trips around the sun, most of them as part of the med device industry, though I actually started my career in the software development industry. So a lot of trips around the sun, which is kind of what I leverage to teach the softer skills. The benefit of my having stepped on a lot of landmines, and hopefully helping others to avoid them where possible. As she mentioned, I'm also an instructor at St. Cloud State University. We have a master's degree program that focuses on the med tech industry. There's 3 degrees, one in quality, one in regulatory, and one in clinical management. And I helped develop the quality program, and I still teach. We're in our 10th, 11th year, and I teach 4 of the courses there as well. So what are we going to talk about here tonight? We're going to talk a lot about communication challenges. I think as quality professionals, we're kind of used to this to some degree, that it's difficult to get quality and anybody else onto the same page and understanding things in the same way. So we'll talk about the challenges there and then maybe how this can help with that. We're going to talk about these 5 languages that I'm talking about, and it's based on a book by a gentleman named Gary Chapman, and I'll talk more about this in a second, which he had some really interesting ideas about love and 5 different languages there, and we've translated that into quality to see if there are maybe different ways in which quality communicates or should be communicating. And it focuses around these 5 elements, around being more encouraging, making sure you've got sufficient face time with those you're trying to influence, acting as mentors, collaborating as much as possible with those we're impacting, and then being empathetic to, we often are changing things or telling people bad news. A little bit of empathy goes a long way. So those are the elements we're going to talk about there. As we go through the talk, I'm okay with just asking questions as we go. Hillary's going to watch the chat area just to see if anything pops up there. But if you want to just open your mic and ask a question, I'd rather you ask it while we're on a topic rather than try to figure it out at the end. We'll do Q&A at the end, so that's fine. But if something comes up, you have a story to share, you want a clarification on something, please just go ahead and ask the question while we're going. I'm good with that kind of interaction. I like this to be more interactive rather than me just lecturing at you. Kind of thing. So let's kind of set the ground, conditions here about some of the communication challenges that we likely run into as quality professionals. So if you want, you could use the the thumbs up or whatever icons. But does any of this sound familiar to anyone? Anytime quality walks into the production area, it's like the C's part. People kind of scurry away, right? Oh, there's quality, get away. Right? I hear some laughing, so some people have their mics open. I hear that. So I'm going to assume we have people thinking, yeah, that does happen, quite a bit. How about, oops, this one? No matter how clear your data, your management never seems to get what's really at stake. Anybody run into that one? I see some hands starting to come up on that as well. Thumbs up. Okay, good. How about, have you guys ever heard this through the grapevine? Maybe from management. Quality just doesn't seem to understand what's important to the business. Anybody ever hear that one or something along those lines? Right, that one doesn't seem as common. Okay, it's a couple of thumbs up there. Whoops, went too far. Anybody kind of pick up on this theme? Oh, don't ask quality. We'll apologize later. We got a heart on that one. Okay, somebody. Yeah, I'm laughing. All right, I think we resonate here. And then the last one, where people just wonder, and this is kind of getting to the question we talked about, how do you get younger people involved in this? Why would anybody want to work for quality? You ever get asked that? I get asked that question a lot. I see some emojis jumping in here, so people definitely have some opinions on this one as well. All right, good. So that's good. So the bottom line is, I think we're used to this. Quality is an image problem, right? We know we're kind of not the favored child, in the mix, right? It's things like we're the ones who always seem like we're raining on the parade. As I said, we're often delivering the bad news. We're always telling everybody they're wrong, right? That they have these great ideas, and then we always seem to be the ones telling them why that's not the right approach. The data is not correct. You're not interpreting it right. You're not coming to the right conclusions. Every time they talk to us, we want to present a bunch of graphs. I get this from one of my business partners all the time, who always kind of, we were meeting, she goes, well, I need to understand this. And then she'll turn around and point at me and go, and do not make a graph for me. Did we run into that one? Right? Everybody just kind of feels like, really? You're going to put another graphic in front of us, another graph and data? People often feel like we're using a different dictionary than everybody else, right? That we're talking in words and terms and acronyms that just are foreign to everybody else. And we're just never satisfied, right? Everybody just kind of goes, when will this end, right? When will you guys be happy with what we're doing, right? Because we're involved, right? We have this thing called continual improvement, which implies it doesn't end, right? And to everybody else, they're kind of like, I can't deal with this, that you guys never see a finish line here. I used to, in my office, one of my jobs, I had a poster on my wall, and it was a highway going straight long through the desert. And the caption was, since the quality journey is never ending, and on the bottom it said, it's really more of a death march. And I think that kind of gets into how a lot of people view quality and its role and its approach to things. So what do we do about this, having this problem? The challenges are, right? You can't fake the empathy. You're not actually being empathetic. It's not going to pass the smell test. People are going to be able to realize, no, you're not really being honest with us about caring about the impact you're having on us. You can't lower your standards, though, right? That's our job, is to keep the bar high. Any lowering of them, we might as well just be giving up at that point, right? And you certainly, for those of us who work in regulated industries, you got to be careful about dropping that nuke and doing things like saying, well, sorry, this agency is going to make us do this. Yes, at the end of the day, you have that always there, but again, you don't always, just because you have the nuke doesn't mean you want to drop it every time, and that's never going to go over well when you kind of pull that trigger. You want everybody to go with you. Trying to go it alone isn't really what you're trying to do, right? You might get something done, but you haven't taken the organization with you. You're not creating a culture of quality when you just go it alone, right? So that's not really a good option either. So this leads me to this idea of the five language. And I want to talk first about how I got there. It actually started. I was being interviewed on a podcast. I don't know if any of you follow Greenlight Guru on LinkedIn. They're an EQMS vendor, and there's a gentleman who does a lot of their social media named Etienne Nichols, and he was interviewing me on his podcast, and they were, it was a lively discussion, and some of the other people who were live listening in were offering questions, and this topic of all these problems that that quality has with its image and being able to be heard came up. And Etienne just kind of threw this out, and he goes, there's this book out there called The 5 Love Languages. I wonder if there's 5 quality languages. And I just kind of ran with that and went, oh, that's a really interesting thought. And now I had never read the book at that point, but it got me to go buy a copy. And I went, you know what? I think there's something here because it's about communicating. So anyway, this is a book that was originally published in '92. It's been a New York Times bestseller for a long time, and just tons and tons of copies sold. I'm pretty sure it's been translated into a lot of languages. Gary Chapman was a pastor, and he did a lot of counseling, couples counseling, as part of that role. And over time, he started to find that when couples were coming in because their relationships were in trouble, they felt like they had fallen out of love, but what he was finding was, no, they didn't actually fall out of love. They just couldn't quite figure out how to meet each other's needs anymore. And at the core of that, he said it was a realization that we tend to try to communicate to others the way we want to be communicated to. And that could be a false assumption, right? Because not everybody has the same communication style or the same needs of what they need to get out of that communication. So assuming that using what you like is going to be what everybody else likes kind of becomes the source of the problem. And that's what he was finding, with trying to fix all these relationships. So there was always this good, probability that you were just simply not meeting the other person's needs, despite best intents, is what he found. The book's pretty interesting because I'm not telling you have to go buy the book, and I'm not trying to sell for him, but it is a good book, and some of the stories are very interesting about the couples and how far down the path of failed relationships they were going, and then figuring out that they just simply weren't connecting correctly over time, and if they could correct that, actually bringing the relationship back to a good place. So Chapman came up with, this was his idea of the 5 languages that he was kind of identifying as he talked to all these couples. The idea that, some people get, their need is to hear words of affirmation, right? They want to hear the positive encouragement and that somebody recognizes the good that they're doing. Just some people just need quality time. It's not about the words. It's just spend time with me. Some people are motivated by gifts, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean go out and buy jewelry or a new set of wrenches or whatever it is that you think this person wants. It can be sometimes very small, subtle gifts, right? That show I see what you did, and I value that. Acts of service, right? Participating in what helps them. He talks about in some of these relationships, it's just grabbing the vacuum cleaner without being asked, that kind of stuff. And then for others, it's the physical aspects of the relationship, right? That some people, that's what they need, is they need that physical touch, that real connection, versus the talking again. So that was kind of the basis for what we're looking at. And as I said, I kind of thought back and going, well, all right, organizations have a lot of relationships going on in them. And I said, couldn't it be that that's the same problem that we see within organizations, within different groups within the organization? And I'm not saying this is unique to quality necessarily, right? This could apply to a lot of different groups. Everybody has a different dynamic in the organization. So, my thought was, it might not be that no one else cares about quality. It's just that they don't care about it in the same way that quality cares about it. And that quality maybe can't quite communicate that level of caring and what that should mean and how others need to hear it. It could be that others have just a different idea of how quality knows how it wants to work, but if they haven't really confirmed that, the rest of the organization might have a different idea. It might not be a bad idea. It just means that they have a different approach to what they think quality should be, but nobody's adjusting to that. So as I said, this came up with this idea of, well, could there be 5 different quality languages? And that's what we're going to jump into here going forward. So first, just to show the parallels between, the love languages and the 5 quality languages. I didn't use the same ones. Physical touch would be kind of weird. So I found it was something different. But for words of affirmation, on the quality language side, my version of that would be just being encouraging in our approach to quality. And I'm going to dive into each of these separately as we go here. So I think, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the chat, seeing if I'm missing anything there. So for me, the words of affirmation becomes encouragement on the quality side. The quality time piece. Well, when it has the word quality, it's actually, that one's not bad. I just turned it around and said, look, let's turn this into FaceTime. I'll talk about, how you really should leverage more FaceTime, to improve, the credibility of the quality organization. Receiving gifts, right? You're not going to go out and buy everybody's buy into your quality system and the things you're trying to do. But mentorship can be a form of gift giving, right? A way to teach people, right? And not just dictate to them, but help them understand the why and start to understand how they can do it on their own, right?
I disagree, though. You can get a lot done with a couple of boxes of donuts for the receiving gifts.
So I don't disagree. I always say one of my tips to people is when you're the head of quality, put a candy jar on your desk, because that will lure people into the office. Right?
Yeah,
Come see quality. We have candy.
Whoever donut.
Yeah. So no, I don't disagree that sometimes actual gifts, especially food, seems to be a wonderful motivator. So yeah, so there's lots of good examples. But I think on a bigger sense, right? Maybe the mentorship thing is a really big gift that you can give. And the acts of service, for me, I translate that into collaborating with the people we're trying to influence and the people we're going to affect, right? And then that last one, right? Physical touch. Like I said, yeah, that would be creepy. Don't go around touching everybody. But I turn that, so let's make that one empathy, right? Let's change that quite a bit and just go, well, we're going to learn to actually be empathetic as an effective means of communicating with people. So that was the kind of the translation I did between love and quality. So let's look at the first of that first one, encouragement, right? Again, you got to be careful of, I get it. It's a natural part of the role, but just be careful and be aware of when we're always raining on the parade. Okay. And remember, don't just spend, if all you're doing is always pointing out what's wrong and you're forgetting to celebrate when things are done right, those small successes are important, right? The idea of eating the elephant, don't try to eat the elephant in one bite. So yeah, we know we want to fix this broader quality issue, but let's celebrate every time we take a bite out of that elephant, right? And show, yes, we're going to recognize this. And it's not that we're not going to view it as success only comes if we complete the whole thing. Any success is a good step in the right direction. And make sure you remember to acknowledge that, to encourage that, to keep people focused and believing that we're progressing in the right direction. I used to use this a lot, when I had teams of people I was leading, and I would say, if you have an organization of 50 people, what would be better? Everyone working towards 1 or 2 big improvements, or everyone working towards 50 small improvements? I'll take the 50 small improvements, and I've done that and shown that's a lot of good things happening, right? And oftentimes they add up then to something bigger. So just again, don't get too focused on the elephant. Just think about the first bite is often a good way to approach this. So as I said, don't forget to celebrate every victory in something. That doesn't mean you have to go through a party, just something, right? Calling people together and going, hey, I just want to show you this month's metrics. This is a step in the right direction, right? We've had months of being below the line or trending in the wrong direction, and we just turned that corner, right? It's not a trend yet, but this is what we're trying to do, right? The graph is going in the right direction now. Even that kind of verbal celebration can really have a big impact on people's morale and how they view the quality organization. All right, so they're not always dissatisfied with what we're doing here. And the benefit of that is, again, you're building that credibility, you're building that relationship. So over time, you gain an ability to deliver bad news, okay, on serious issues, problem areas. Now it becomes easier for them to hear you because they know you're not just always negative, right? You do recognize when they're doing something right or when things are moving in the right direction. So now they're willing to hear, right? You've created trust, right? So now they're willing to hear you when you say, look, this is not where we need to be, rather than just, oh, there it is again, quality isn't happy. And now what are we going to do? All right. The FaceTime piece. I think this one is one everybody kind of gets. Avoid always only showing up when there's a problem. Don't be the SWAT team, kind of rushing in, going, all right, everybody stop. Everything's bad. That shouldn't be the only time people see the quality organization or people, from the quality team. Right. You're probably all familiar with this concept of Gemba walks. Walking the floor every day is useful, right? If you don't want those C's to always part, and they probably will initially if you've not been doing this, but the more they start to see you there, the longer it goes on, then they realize you're not there like spying on them or looking for a particular problem. It's just made this part of the normal process. Again, that familiarity, that trust starts to build up. Your credibility, goes up, and they're willing to talk to you. And again, it's not just walk through, observe suspiciously, and move on, right? Stop, talk to people, find out what's going on, start creating those connections. Be inquisitive, right? What do we do at this work zone, right? What kind of problems do you run into? Don't be investigative, guys. So what do you guys do if you see you're trending in the wrong direction? And how many flaws do you see? How many nonconformances do you log a day? That sounds like investigative. Just be inquisitive. Tell me about this process. Where do you run into trouble in this process? What do you see, right? That isn't obvious. Because a lot of times nobody thinks to ask the operators that stuff, and they sometimes are really happy that somebody wants to get their opinion on something or just hear what's going on. And they can tell you things that are not going to show up in the graphs, right? So make that connection by getting out there and doing things. Besides walking the floor, there's all the process owners, all your stakeholders, right? The various supervisors, managers, directors, VPs. Schedule time with them. Set up regular one-on-ones. Otherwise, a lot of times the only time they see you is when you set up an appointment for something specific. I need to talk to you about this problem. How about if you just said, look, we're going to meet every 2 weeks just to see what's happening. Are there any issues that quality could help with? Just listening again, right? So make sure you're touching bases. This becomes really important if you're responsible for multiple sites. There's no substitute for getting out to those sites, and I get it. The past few years has been a challenge for that, and hopefully everybody then leveraged virtual technologies as much as possible. But it's time to get back out there and to get on those sites. For me, it was telling. I do a lot of audits, and I did an audit, and we just had to go across town to another manufacturing facility, and the quality director, I said, well, here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see incoming, right? So I can look at incoming inspection and how you handle the materials. And she didn't quite know the way through the building to get there. And I thought that tells me a lot about the quality organization here, right? That she's not here very much if she can't even tell me how to get to the incoming inspection area. That's not the right approach, right? And then you could kind of see it throughout the day. How do people relate to her? It was very standoffish, right? You don't want to be that kind of quality person. There's a concept called appreciative inquiry. If you're not familiar with it, Google it. Comes out of psychology. But as opposed to the usual when we're doing audits or inspections and we're typically asking or looking for what's wrong, this is an approach that says, no, don't ask that question. If you want to understand what's happening in process, say, so tell me about a batch run that went really well, or tell me about a project that ended really successfully. You'll learn more there, because then they're obviously going to be willing to talk about something that was successful. And in the process of doing that, you listen and you go, hey, wait, I just heard you say something. So tell me more about that, where you just said, yeah, we had this one point where we stumbled a little bit. It was a little bit of a challenge. So what happened there? Right. But now they've gotten into this mode of talking to you about what went well. And they're willing to say, oh, yeah, well, here's what happened there. We had some miscommunication between the requirements and the engineering, that went from there. So what'd you guys do about that? It's a really good approach. I use it actually during audits. I've really changed how I ask my audit questions to be more of this, tell me about something good. And from that, I'm going to pick up on where there's some opportunities that I might want to dig into a little bit more, but they're now more willing to share that information with me. All right. So the gift giving or the mentorship piece of this. again, we know our stuff really well. It seems to us second nature and just should be straightforward, and sometimes we do offer an explanation, but not a really good one. Just don't assume that everybody knows what to do or will understand what you're explaining to them, right? Don't assume that they even understand the problem, the words you're using, the tools you're throwing at them, or even the goals, right? Why they should care about this. Again, it'll kind of fit in with the empathy piece later on, about understanding who are they, what do they do, where do they fit in the organization? Do they have a sense of their fit in things? Because you could be talking about, loftier goals and objectives, and they're kind of going, I put these two widgets together. I don't understand why you're telling me about, inventory turns or something, or, customer complaint, frequency. They're kind of going, I just have to put this part into this part and glue them together. I don't understand why you're talking to me. So you always got to, say, well, what can I start to teach them about this to help them understand their place in the bigger picture, if that's the thing you're trying to influence. And it's this difference between educating and training people, right? Training is about the how. We're going to do it like this. Education is more about the what and the why. Give them the context. And I think we often do that, where we just we get too prescriptive and we give them a work instruction, say, you must follow these steps exactly as I've laid them out and do not deviate from that. And they don't know why, right? You haven't really explained why. And they get it. They're supposed to do what you say, but they don't know how to maybe avoid the problems because you haven't talked about the reasoning for that. Example I give, I worked at a place that made temperature control packaging. And in temperature control packaging, air is the enemy because air conducts thermal energy really well. And so as we're building insulator boxes to go inside another box, they were made up of insulator panels that had to be literally taped together to form an insulator box. And gaps between the panels would be bad. And so we gave them work instructions, and we gave them a gauge to use to show they couldn't have anything bigger than a 3 millimeter gap between any of the panels. And gaps are bad, gaps are bad, gaps are bad, gaps are bad. Okay. And what we find is our first pass yield, get ready for this, 32%. That's pretty horrible, right? It's not a terribly difficult process. It's not, hard to understand. And we've given them a tool and we've said no more than 3 millimeter gaps. So how is it that 2/3 of what they build can't pass that test, right? And then it just occurred to me one day as I started doing more of the walking around and getting to know people, and then finally just asked one of the operators a question going, do you know what you're making? Right? To them, it was a box. All right. Do you know what kind of box? Well, it's an insulator. All right. You're good. You're right. Do you know what we do with this? Well, it goes inside another box. All right. I get that. But do you know what the box is used for? Not a clue. Not a clue. Do you know who our customers are? Not really. Okay, well, our customers are pharmaceutical companies, and there are things like, there are temperature sensitive drugs like insulin, right? Something that people will understand. Our boxes are used to do that because they have to maintain cold temperature as they're being shipped for several days, right? And of course, if we don't maintain the temperature, then the insulin is bad and can harm somebody or just simply isn't usable when they need it, right? And then that can cause all kinds of problems for the patient. And the reason we're so focused on 3 millimeters is because for each millimeter above that, the box loses 5% of the duration during which it can protect the temperature. Light bulbs start to go on. I didn't know we were shipping stuff like that. I didn't know this box was used for something so critical. Okay. The result of that, simply pulling everybody together and going, hey, let's talk about what these boxes do, how they fit into the greater good. This isn't perfect. Again, it wasn't great, but we went from that 32% to 46%. Now, that means we still have a lot of work to do, but just helping people understand, mentoring them in, where do they fit into this? Where do their actions, play a role in the performance of our product? Help them pay more attention, right? Now, what that told us was there's something wrong in the process because they're now giving it their best effort and they still can't get above 46%, right? That's a whole nother quality issue, but we just solved a big part of the problem. Right? We did just make a huge improvement. Now we need to figure out how to get them the rest of the way. Always focus on people's strengths rather than their weaknesses. If you're not familiar with Marcus Buckingham, he wrote a book called First Break All the Rules. A lot of people sometimes are familiar with the Strengths Finder tool. This is where it came from, was out of this book and its follow on, Now Discover Your Strengths. Actually, Now Discover Your Strengths is when the Strengths Finder tool came about. And Marcus didn't do this alone, obviously, but he's kind of the source of this stuff. And these are two books I highly recommend if you've not read them, because they get into all of this. People have certain natural strengths, right? If you've ever taken the Strengths Finder, that's sort of trying to help you understand where are your natural strengths, where are the things you're not naturally going to be strong at. And the reality is it's hard to change people's weaknesses. It's kind of like what I just talked about with building these boxes. The process was weak. We could do a little bit to improve it, but we weren't going to fully improve it without changing it considerably. People are harder to change. So the key is, I see somebody is mentioning Peter Drucker here, right? I think he was the one with the right person in the right seat at the right time, right? Everybody's on the bus and right in the right place. It's that kind of thinking, right? Is figuring out what people are good at and then making sure that you've aligned them with the right things to work on. But you can't figure that out, right, if you don't do some of the other communication steps, right? Doing the walk, empathizing, you'll see there's a tie-in between all of these things. But that focus on people's strengths and can I mentor them to even get better at those strengths, right? Because a lot of times just because they have a natural strength doesn't mean they're good at it yet. It's what they could be better at. Now they need the mentorship, the teaching, the education to help them get there. And in part of this, right, is sort of passing it forward, creating that next mentor. Okay, you're not always going to be around. You can't mentor everybody. Can you build that next mentor? And the bonus benefit, there is this quote, Joseph Joubert, it's an obscure name, to teach is to learn twice, right? And they always say one of the best ways you can learn is by trying to have to teach something to somebody. That's one of the things I love about teaching my college students. It keeps me really sharp because they expect me to know this stuff. And if I'm going to teach it to them, I've got to be prepared for all the different kinds of questions there. So I see in the chat, Bob put the cover from Strengths Finder. It's up to 2.0. I think it might even be past that, but Tom Rath has taken it over from Buckingham. Buckingham's still out there and he still writes a lot of really good books. But again, that moving from training to more of an education to a mentoring mindset, it will, create benefits that will go on and on and on without you. That's really a good thing to establish if you're trying to create a quality culture. Sorry, just doing a quick time check. I want to make sure I'm keeping up on the right things here. All right, number 4 is about collaboration. And I think this one should be a no-brainer, right? But again, there's that perception that quality is always coming in and doing something to us, right? And so do your best to not seem like the guy who's always doing something to somebody. And that kind of gets back to that not always showing up only when things are bad. And again, as I said, a lot of these are interconnected. So it might not be that you have to figure out one of these 5 languages to see which one is the right one that resonates with your target group. It might be that you have to use several of them, 2, 3, maybe all of them. That sometimes is the reality of it. But if you haven't taken a step back and tried to figure out which are the right ones, you're going to have a problem there. But that's part of that collaboration is first. I can't collaborate with people if I don't know what they'd prefer in terms of how I should be communicating with them, right? How I should be guiding them, that kind of thing. Anytime you're analyzing a situation and coming up with plans to make change, don't forget to involve those that are doing the work now, right? I don't care how smart you are, how many years of experience you have, how well you think you understand, whatever it is you're trying to improve, the people down on the floor, the people actually in that process, I guarantee you know things you were completely unaware of. You've got to get them to be part of that process, right? I say right there, that's good advice just by itself, right? Don't overthink how bright you are, okay? That's not meant to be an insult. Just, have some humility and go, I should really talk to these people and find out what else don't I know, right? Because as I said, if I start have conversations with them and they get comfortable with me, they're going to share things that are not going to show up in the data, or that even if we sat the team down in a room and quizzed them or asked them to brainstorm, it might not come out as you will get if you just start creating good relationships and learn how to communicate with each person, you will learn a ton before you go ahead and put together some grand plan for changing everything. The other benefit it has, when you involve people in doing that analysis, and eventually you go, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. You've been talking, as we've been talking, I hear you talking about you have this challenge and you don't like this, and you can't seem to get somebody to listen to you on this. I'm going to help with that. Right? But I need you to participate, be part of it. Right now, it's not you coming in from the outside and telling them what to do. They are part of it. They can have a piece of the ownership of this. Right? They feel like they have a voice. Everybody likes to have a voice, but when they have that sense of ownership, now when you come in and go, well, here's the change we're going to make, they can't go, oh, I don't like that idea, because it's going to be partially their idea. Okay. So it's a way to get past those fears and the defensiveness that often comes with change, because we typically as humans don't like change, even when it's from, making something better. Change just creates a lot of stress to that.
One thing is in a production environment, especially, those operators know more about what they're doing than what you'll ever know. And if you have their respect, they'll tell you what's wrong and how to fix it. They just got to have that respect for you to where you'll listen.
Yep. What I often find when I start building those relationships is how often I get the story of they've wanted to tell somebody, they have no idea who to tell. Right?
Or they told somebody and nobody did anything.
Well, there's that too, but other times they just feel like they don't know who's going to listen to them, because there's this feeling, well, I'm just an operator. Nobody wants to hear from me. Right. And again, because this perception of quality, misguided as it might be, is, well, I was told don't really share anything with them. Right. When this is the very group, right, that they should be sharing this, and who wants to hear this stuff. But if you've created this wall because of the way you've been communicating and acting, this perception can be really powerful, right? So you're trying to overcome a lot of these negative perceptions of the quality organization by finding the right way to communicate with everybody. And ultimately, right, you want to get out of the mode of being the quality police. If you can get to the point where people see quality as a partner, right, a valued partner that they cannot do without, call it a career. You've done a good thing. But that's really what you're trying to get to, is how do we get them to want us as part of, the situation, and somebody that they would go, no, we need to get quality in here because they'll have some good feedback for us, right? When you can build that level of trust and confidence in what the quality organization does, then you can pat yourself on the back and say, we've created the right culture here, right? But if they're always fearing you, you're just going to tell us no, you're going to tell us when we're doing it wrong. Right, then you've got some work to do on the communications here. Right, again, just checking the clock here. Then, okay, number 5, empathy. Okay, I'm a fan of Stephen Covey as well. I don't know if anybody's read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Another huge bestseller, been around forever. A lot of good ideas in there. One of the things I always like is he's got this part of it that's called "Seek first to understand, right, then to be understood." Right. And it's about listening. My mother always put it a different way, which was mouth shut, ears open. Probably everybody's mother had something like that to say. But Covey, that was one of the 7 habits, right? Is just make sure you're listening more than you're speaking, right? Because if you listen first, then you'll get your opportunity to say what you want to say later, assuming you figured out the right way to say it. This one, like I said, becomes an underpinning. Bob said, we're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? I've heard that one plenty of times as well. I think my mother hit me with that one quite a bit as well. I think this one is important, empathy, because it does sort of underlie all the other 4 languages, right? That there's obviously a connection here. I've talked about it as I went through it. And there's certainly a foundation by using empathy to enable the other communication tools. To me, this one is almost like, like I said, sometimes you're going to have to speak in multiple languages out of these 5. Empathy is always probably going to be one of them, right? Because it just carries so much weight and buys you, again, so much credibility and trust in there. We're typically wired for, being in quality. We're driven to find targets to make better. But again, that idea of just listen, just be paying attention. Don't go in with an agenda when you're doing your walk around, or however it is you've you figured out is the best way to communicate with an organization or an individual. It's always comes back to just make sure you're doing more of the listening. Even if you have an idea of where I think I'm aware of, maybe the data says, look, we have a problem here, like my first pass yield problem in this one operation. When I took a step back and said, I need to observe a lot more, I need to build a relationship with these people, and I need to listen to what they're running into, and I need to help them understand, right? I started to understand a lot more about how to fix that problem and how to engage them in helping us fix it, right? And it goes without saying again, right? Taking a walk in their shoes, that's part of the empathy, right? Maybe go learn how to do what they're doing, right? Whether that's through observation or if they'll actually let you touch, product and let you build something. It's a great way, right, for you to get firsthand knowledge of going, well, that's really difficult to put those two parts together. They just don't meet very well. And I can't believe you build 1,200 of these a day, right? You really start to learn a lot when you can, get close to the problem before you, drop bombs from 50,000 feet, kind of thing. This kind of approach, I keep using this example of this first pass yield problem, just because it had a lot of good lessons in it. I won't tell the whole story of what we found out there, but we did finally figure out what was wrong with the process, which required us to engage the people in the process, and they gave us the hints we needed to get to the right part of the process. We were completely in the wrong part of the process, what we were trying to do, as these things often happen. And the end result is when we did finally fix the process, first pass yields went to 98%. I'm going to call that success, right? So these approaches can definitely buy you a lot of good and actually help you get to your objectives a lot more cleanly and with a higher probability of success. So how do you make all this happen? Okay. So as I said, quality, because of the nature of what we do, and we get into everything in the organization, right? The quality system extends throughout the organization, whether the organization realizes that or not, it does. So it's more than just being aware of these 5 languages, but quality has the unfortunate, role of probably having to speak all of them, because you're going to need to translate, periodically and switch languages, right? As you start to understand what is each group or which part of the organization, again, or individuals are going to need to hear from you. So nobody said being in quality is easy. Just like we have to learn so much of the operations, like I said, from end to end. This goes then to, how we communicate. We're going to need to be fluent in a lot of different forms of communication. But it starts with, make sure you start to identify, again, always be thinking about, what is it that this group or this person needs to hear? Because I'm probably not connecting with them yet, right? So what is it that we need to understand? Chapman's book, his observation was there's always 2 that are at the top out of the 5. Like I said, it could be more, but he found that it was rarely just one language solved the problem. Usually there were 2 top 5. Actually, as part of the book, you can take a survey that'll tell you what your love languages are, and it'll rank them for you. And I took mine, and sure enough, the graph showed there were 2 that were definitely more prevalent than the other 3. And I had my wife do it just for fun. Not that we had any problems to address, but same kind of thing popped out. So just remember that within each individual, within each area, it may not just be one language that's going to make for a better connection between quality in that organization or that person. It likely is going to be at least 2, maybe more. And yeah, so there could always be this question of, well, why do we have to change? How come they don't have to change to accommodate us? Just get used to that. That's part of the role. The quality needs to change its habits first. We're the ones who are who see all the data, see all the opportunity, want to make all these changes. Then we have to be the ones to kind of swallow our pride and say, let's look in the mirror and let's change ourselves first, right? Bob threw out the term servant leadership, which has been a more popular phrase in the last few years. And I agree, right? So how do you gotta bury your ego and go, I'm gonna try to make the change first here. I'm gonna model the behaviors I'm hoping to see in others, kind of thing. Again, I think starting with language number 2, the FaceTime piece, getting familiar, letting them get familiar with you. probably is the place to start. If you have no idea, I'd start with just getting out there, right? And starting to meet with people. Then as you start to see some results, some improved, trust, that's when you can start to share, hey, here's what I need or what quality needs back and how we need things communicated. Okay? But at least now, first we've sought to understand, right? Now, let me help you out. We need to be understood, right? So now you can turn it back into bi-directional communication. But you can't just jump down there and go, hey, look, we're obviously not communicating. Here's what I need you to change, right? That approach, that messaging is not going to work, right? So, like I said, swallow your pride, go, I'm going to change how I'm doing things. And then hopefully people will resonate with that and start to open up and start to trust us. And then I can start going, hey, this is getting better. This is what I also need, right? Now you get to say, here's, and if you buy Chapman's book, you'll see a lot of that in the relationships, that it took one person to finally go, I'm going to stop being angry that my partner won't change, and I'm going to change first. And even if they're reluctant, if there's somebody who doesn't change easily, let's see if they pick up on the fact that I'm changing. And that more often than not, his stories have that element to it. All right, so let's go a little wrap up here. So some of the key takeaways, right? Remember, don't assume everybody else thinks and needs the same as you. It's a common mistake we make as human beings, but just always, again, don't make that assumption. And remember that this, again, as I have started to say, it's not just about organizations or individuals. It can be either, can be a combination. It comes at all different levels, and you need to be prepared to keep speaking a different language, right? And being aware of, all right, who am I trying to communicate with now? At what level? Excuse me, and to what scope? Again, you can't figure this out unless you engage. And that's why I said the FaceTime thing is usually the best place to start. It's, again, if this is not one of your opportunities to go build a graph or some sort of spreadsheet to analyze the situation, just start getting out there and talking to people and building those relationships. Don't show them a graph. Don't do a presentation. Just start acting, right? Those habits the way you'd like them to be, and showing that you're listening and you're an okay person to talk to, kind of thing. As I already said, right, quality is going to have to speak all of the languages. Even though there's probably one or two that quality or you as an individual need, as I said, you've got to be prepared to speak back in all of them, because you're going to have to adjust. The breadth of what we typically do is wide enough that we're going to recognize we're going to be talking to a lot of different people, a lot of different types of organizations, and they all are going to have a different need for how they want to be communicated to. And as I said, don't turn this into an analytical exercise, right? Go with your heart on this. This is a soft skill, not a technical skill. So just put that normal quality thinking aside, right? We don't need a run chart. I don't need to calculate any statistics here. I just need to be personable, right? And start to open up and show them that, yeah, I'm not a machine. I'm a human being as well. Quality is a good, organization to work with. We will understand you. We want to understand you. We can be trusted. And then from there, you should start to see some improvement and some benefits from all this. No, you will not do a force field analysis, Bob. Put that one away.
Had to throw that in.
No, that was great. I love it. So, all right, that was all of it. So I appreciate again the attendance. I like the comments that are sitting there, but I'll open it up for questions and commentary. If anybody's got good stories, hearing what the audience has experienced in these areas is often a great part of the learning. So if you have a really good example to share, even if it's contrary, if you go, well, here's what I ran into. Somebody did kind of talk about, hey, food is a good motivator. If you've got some contrary thoughts, I'm okay with you bringing those up as well. So what do you got?
Steve, it's Nicole. I do have a question for you.
Okay.
So especially coming into teams that, if you're new to the team and there have been a lot of previous baggage from other leaders or managers, how do you suggest building that trust, especially when you talk about rounding and gamble walking and asking those questions out of curiosity? But if they've already had, previous negative experiences, what are some ways you think you can start, breaking through that wall with them?
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I've been there. I took over a department one time and my predecessor was just awful to these people. Everything every myth and bad perception of management, this person personified. And so there was a lot of distrust, and I'm just the latest flavor and the latest guy to not be trusted. And that's tough, right? You've got to overcome a lot of just bad feelings there. In a situation like that, it's good to acknowledge it, to let them know, you know what, I know this has been really awful up until now, right? Which is what I did with this department. I called a meeting and I said, I get it. This has not been a fun place to work. You guys are not getting what you want out of this company. You're not getting, you're not getting promotions. You're not getting recognition. You're not feeling like you're getting paid enough. You feel like your idea. I mean, they usually big laundry list. Just get it out in the open. Acknowledge. I understand that, right? And then from there, I just said, look, I know I'm the new guy, and I could say, oh, trust me, and there's nothing there yet. But I said, don't lump me in with the previous management. I'm not that person. I'm a different person. And I'm telling you that I am aware of this stuff as part of the first step in showing I do want to hear about this stuff. And then you've just got to continue with that messaging. I do want to hear this. I do want to do something about it. And I said, by the way, I can't guarantee I can fix some of these things. Some of these might be outside my grade level, but I promise to hear them and see what I can do if there's anything, if you'll go that distance with me. Now, this was a good sized department, like 28 people or something like that. And so there's this bell curve that happens, right? Where there are some people who are just like, oh, thank God, right? And we're ready to talk to me right there, right? And on the other end of the spectrum, just, there's people going, oh, he's full of crap. He's going to be the next one. Just understand there's going to be this thing. And what you do is you focus on those who are ready to take the leap with you right away. Get with them first. Turn them into believers, because they'll communicate to the others. Hey, you know what? I had a one-on-one with him and he did listen to me and he didn't judge. And we've talked about what maybe we could do about this. And then eventually, again, eat the elephant one bite at a time, small victories. All right, we're going to win this one. And then you can show, hey, I heard you guys and look what we got done. We actually fixed that problem. What's next, right? And just keep communicating back. All the things we talked about, I've not forgotten about them. I'm trying this, I'm trying that. Here's where we won. That we lost that one. Doesn't mean we're going to not try it again or try something different, but you've just got to have that persistence and show them that you're willing to go with them. Now, be careful. The other side of that is if the problem is the source of the problem is still there, right? If it's you're the supervisor and it's the director that's the problem, the director hasn't left. Of course, obviously you got to be careful of the ways in which you do that. But there are ways to do it. I mentioned to the breakout group I was with, I do a workshop called Guerrilla Tactics for Quality Leadership, where I get into some of that stuff for how you're willing to take a few risks, how you can get some stuff done without having the authority to do it, right? And where there might be people with different ideas who would otherwise thwart you. But like I said, it comes back to, as we talked about, just start communicating and just acknowledge. Yeah, I understand. This is where the problem is. I want to hear more about that. And I honestly want to figure out if there's a way to fix that. I'm not the person who created that problem. I want to hear what you have to say.
Steve, this is Bob Mitchell. I'd like to share with everybody my experience coming into a large manufacturer, 3M company. I started in the laboratory, product development, process development. And after my first 5 years, I had built quite a reputation for understanding quality and quality by design. But I realized that 3M being a manufacturing company at its core, I really needed to get some manufacturing experience. So I moved to one of our largest manufacturing plants. And the first thing I did was to work on the production floor with the crew for my first 2 months as just the operator assistant. I took commands and direction from the operators, and I learned so much about the process, but more importantly, it really helped establish a rapport and a relationship with the people. Quality is all about people and relationships. And I quickly learned that they all wanted to do the right thing. They all had a customer-focused, customer-first attitude. And they were facing a lot of challenges. Some of them were systems. Some of them were inefficient, ineffective processes. Some of them were just the fact that they were in competition with other manufacturing targets and challenges. Get it out first, get it out quick, get it out the cheapest cost versus customer first. But they really wanted to do the right thing. And my first 2 months working on the production floor really helped to build those relationships. So then when I went back to the traditional role of helping to improve product quality, process quality, organizational effectiveness, I was able to communicate or be that key stakeholder between production, the people out on the floor, and management teams. And it really helped forge a strong working relationship with my peers and colleagues all throughout my 35 years of experience. So people on the floor, they know they want to do the right thing. But there are challenges that they face every day.
I've seen just the opposite, where I worked in an incredible teamwork environment. It was held up as a model. And we had a requirement that anybody who came in our door, didn't care who you were, you could be a new accounting person, new receptionist, didn't care. You spent your first 3 weeks out on the shop floor, running a forge press, running a trim press, those types of things there. And because it was all about supporting production. Well, we got a new plant manager in, and he didn't like that. He was too good for that. So he destroyed that culture within a year, and he was hated. I mean, to the point of scheming ways to get him deported, hated. So be very careful about destroying good cultures just because people think that they're better than someone.
Yeah, that's right. Leadership creates the culture. They can deteriorate a culture.
Yeah, I think that gets into that, seek first to understand. Whatever situation you come into when you're new, you're going to get told a lot of, here's how things are. I always say, great, that's one data point. Go find out the rest, right? Go be curious, be skeptical, right? And figure out what's actually happening there. I mean, when I talk about that department that, had been treated really badly, when I got that role, I was told, look, let's understand, you're probably going to need to disband the organization and probably fire just about everybody in it. There might be 3 people out of the 28 that you'd keep. That was what I was told. 3 years later, I did clean out a little bit of dead wood. 4 people were gone, but everybody else was still there, and some of them got promoted twice in that period. Right, the supposedly hapless group that had no competence and no value to the company, it was now a department being held up as a model for the others. Right, because I didn't believe what everybody was telling me about it. Because I said, no, you can't have that many incompetent people. There's something else going on here. And I suspect it was the previous leadership was the problem. But again, I needed them to help me understand that. I couldn't do an analysis. I couldn't take the existing data because I didn't trust it. Right? I had to build a rapport, hear them tell me what exactly is going on here.
Hey, Steve, this is Steve Harmeyer. Thank you. It was a great presentation. Listen to you speak right there kind of reminded me of my days with the GM and our transition to GMS, Lean Six Sigma, and the NUMMI plant out of California, where the entire plant was shut down just due to really bad leadership and inability to collaborate with union workers. And then Toyota came back in, basically rehired about 80% of the same workforce and made it one of the most profitable plants. So there's a lot to say to that. One of the things that I left the automotive industry some years ago, and I joined Crown Equipment, which is a great company, about 20,000 employees global, but it's still privately owned. And I'll never get coming from automotive is my backbone. I mean, I got probably 20 something years in there. But one of the first things they did with me and everybody else I see them hire, especially in the management ranks, is they put me through a orientation called the first 90 days. I don't know if you've heard of that book or not. There's actually a book to it. And for the first 90 days, I was scheduled FaceTime basically with all the different leaderships across the organization, managers that I would have to interact with, collaborate with, their people, their workforce, and learn what they do, what their pain points were. And just kind of what you just kind of rolled out there, they have a standard work basically that drives their managers to go through something like that and learn that technique. Very interesting.
I do know that book. I turned around because I'm pretty sure it's on my bookshelf behind me somewhere. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's a good presentation. Good message.
Thanks. All right. What else is on people's minds? Anybody look at this stuff and go, I already do all this, which would be great. Did anybody have any aha moments?
I can say it's one of my weaknesses. I'm a problem solver. I'm kind of an introvert, and I have to really work at those relationships. I'd rather go just grab a few people, go work on a issue that's bothering folks instead of grabbing a team and the folks and say, hey, let's see what you guys can come up with. And I'm kind of I want the baby, not the labor pains type person. So.
Yeah, there's sort of that prototypical engineer and in quality, maybe even more so, right? I think we're often the introverts. That's why we like the data so much, right? Because we can sort of insulate ourselves from that. And yeah, it's you have to work at it. And hopefully this gives you some ideas of how do I break out of that mold and expand my thinking and it can be scary, especially if you're in one of these situations where things are not good. Even that idea of acknowledging how bad it is can seem what's scary because you're worried about then they're just going to pile on and go, yeah, you're right. You're also wrong. Yeah, you're going to hear, but that's fine. You got to be ready to deal with that. And over time, it's like anything. The more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get at it and the better results you start to get.
And hearing your response to Nicole's question about how to pick up after a bad leadership team, it became clear to me that empathy is kind of going to be one of those 5 love quality languages that's basically inherent to every other quality language that you speak, because you were talking about 2 different quality languages. And that one, the empathy portion of it was still in there. You were talking about basically leveling with people and getting to where they're at, meeting them where they're at, just saying, hey, I know you've been through this. I want to see it improve. There's an element of empathy right there, just in that, just letting them know that you're on their side and that you can feel their pain and understand what they've been through. So I think that's going to be a part of any one of these languages in quality.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, that 5th, that empathy piece does tend to be through all of them, right? That you're always going to have that element. If you're doing the others and you're not being empathetic, you're probably not doing it right.
Yeah. And I did read the 5 love languages, which is why I kept getting caught up in the beginning of that little piece.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's an easy read. So.
It is absolutely. Does anyone else have questions for Steve? Or comments about your personal experience? Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up for this evening. Thank you so much, Steve, for joining us, and thank you for sticking with us as long as you have. We know it's late there in Minnesota, so we really do appreciate you joining us this evening and imparting some of your knowledge on the quality languages.
Yeah, I see some comments going in, so I'm glad people are finding it useful.
Absolutely.
I can see my phone is off the side. I can see some LinkedIn requests are coming, and I encourage that. I'm happy to connect with people. I'm happy to talk afterwards, take questions by email or by direct message or whatever. So yeah, please use my network, leverage me. I love talking with people and learning more about what everybody's facing, and continuing to build on this concept.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And Steve's presentation, I had someone ask me this earlier, is available on the Phoenix section website. If you go onto the website, it should be posted on that first page of our website. So if you'd like to reference that later, you can find it there. And then for those of you that just want to hang on with us for just a couple more minutes, we do have some closing comments and some closing slides. So give me just a second to take the screen back. Okay. This is just a reminder that we do have meeting evaluation surveys, and we do appreciate you filling those out once you get the email from our VOC chair inviting you to participate in the survey itself. It does help us make improvements to our member meetings and provides benefit to you as a member. Our 2023 program schedule, sorry about that. The senior leadership team with ASQ Phoenix is considering 8 hybrid meetings. We've already had, this is our 3rd one this year, and then 4 in-person only meetings. And we actually made our first in-person only meeting, which was in March, as Bob was discussing earlier, a hybrid meeting as well. So hopefully we will be continuing with that throughout the remaining in-person meetings this year. We'll include that virtual component as well for those that can't join us in person. And then we're also looking at one tour, kind of a non-formal networking event, if you will, where we'll be touring a company, like a manufacturing company, or someone had mentioned Amazon, or maybe a laboratory of some sort, a winery or brewery, or getting involved in a charity event like Habitat for Humanity. We haven't decided just yet, but we will keep you posted on what is decided and how you can get involved if you do decide to meet us for that. And then we will have one annual holiday networking event in December. Something else to look forward to coming up on May 11th. So next month, our member meeting will have a presentation by Stephen Bonacorsi on how to win results that stick. So we encourage you to join us for that. And again, that will be all virtual for that program meeting. If you'd like to connect with us on social media, we do have our own Facebook page. We are on LinkedIn, we are on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we're on YouTube. And again, this is just another spot for a good reminder about our social media influencer. So if that is something that you enjoy doing, being on social media and getting views, we encourage you to reach out to us to become our social media influencer and get folks interested in what the ASQ Phoenix section is doing on those different sites. And before we disband for this evening, are there any final thoughts, comments, or questions, either for myself Stephen, or any of the section leadership team? All right. If not, I just want to thank you for your participation this evening and for joining us for Steve's presentation. We hope that you have a safe and healthy month, and we look forward to seeing you again in May. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful month.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Okay, thank you.
Great presentation.
Hey, Hillary,
Yeah.
will I get a copy of the feedback as part of my continuous improvement?
We can provide it if there are any comments. Usually the presenters don't get a bunch of comments, but if those people that are actually still online with us would be interested in giving you feedback in the survey that comes out, they are free to do that. So if you guys who are still online want to give Stephen feedback, please feel
I
free.
saw you had some metrics about whether people thought it was good, great, okay,
Yeah,
even that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, as well as some commentary back. Because I wouldn't be a very good quality professional if I didn't, right, try to continually improve. So
yeah, absolutely. We do get some comments, and I will definitely give you that feedback regarding the good, the great, and all that other stuff. Hopefully it will come with some comments though, so that it's more specific.
great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for joining us.
Yep, have a good night.
You too.